So to reference where we left off, we're going to be creating a newsletter sign-up form with Node.js. Now this may seem like a simple project, but the process that goes into it is actually quite tricky, mainly because there are so many tools and variables that one must take into consideration. You can go in guns blazing, but if you don't plan things out correctly, things can go awry really quickly. You have the potential to leave a vulnerability open to hackers, you can end up with a super disorganized project directory, or you may just end up with something that works about half the time. So let's start planning this thing out. So first we have a form in the browser. And if a user is to enter their email address and expect it to be added to our mailing list, we're going to need a backend programming language to process the request. The user's email address will be sent across the internet directly to our server, where we'll have a Node.js app running. And the Node.js app will be listening for all incoming post requests and say, hey, if I receive a post request for this specific URL and it contains an email address, then I'll add this email to whoever's MailChimp account is associated with this specific server. Now, depending on whether or not the email was successfully added to MailChimp, the server will respond to the user with a success or error message, notifying them that they are now signed up and ready to receive emails, or that MailChimp was unable to process their request. Okay, so right off the bat, we can tell that we're going to need Node.js as a backend language in order to process our form submissions from the browser. Now, from experience, I can tell you it's a little tricky to implement something that can process a post request, which is plain old Node.js. But lucky for us, there's a Node.js framework called Express.js, and this will make processing our post requests a cinch. So let's jump right in and start setting up our project with Express. Open up your terminal and cd to a directory where you want to store your project. I usually store my most recent stuff in home/web, so I'm going to go ahead and head on over there. Once you're in a directory you're happy with, we're going to go ahead and create a directory specifically for our app. And to do this, we're going to run mkdir newsletter signup form. cd into that directory, and we're now ready to begin creating the files needed for our app. So the first thing we're going to need is an app.js file, and in order to create one of these, we're going to touch one in the terminal. Now this app.js file is going to act as the main point of entry to our backend. It'll be responsible for setting up our app, processing any post requests sent towards our server, and adding users' emails to MailChimp. So now we have a main entry point for our backend, but in order to write code in it specifically with Express, we're first going to need to pull in a few packages. And since we're pulling in packages, we want to be able to track what are known as dependencies, basically libraries of code that our app needs in order to function. A perfect example would be no other than Express. We need Express in order for our app to process post requests, therefore our app depends upon it, and therefore we can call Express a dependency. So in order to keep track of our dependencies, we're going to create a package.json file, and you can kind of think of this as a file that details our app's configuration. To create a package.json file, head on over to your terminal and run npm init-y. Now before we can check the contents of our package.json file, let's go ahead and install a dependency real quick, specifically Express. To install it, all we need to do is type in npm install express --save. npm install express will of course download the Express package, while the --save will ensure that the package is listed as a dependency within the package.json file we just created. So with our package.json file created and Express installed, let's go ahead and check out our project so far. Open up the project in Sublime Text or your preferred text editor, and click on the package.json file. So you see, if we look near the bottom of this file, we have an entire section dedicated towards listing our dependencies, with Express being listed as our first one. And as a quick note, when you're installing packages with npm, use the save flag only if a package is required for your application to function. If the package is only used for development purposes, such as minifying or testing your code, then you would use the --save-dev flag. And this will list your package in a dev dependencies section, separate from the standard dependencies section we see here now. Useful for understanding what packages are required for production and which are required for development. Alright, so we have Express installed now, but we still need to set it up so that it understands 1. What to do when someone visits our site, and 2. What to do whenever a post request is sent to our server. So as I mentioned, app.js is going to be our main entry point for our backend. Therefore, that's where we're going to set up Express. So once we're inside, let's pull in our Express module using require. And what require is doing is, it's pulling in all of the contents required to run Express, and storing them within a single constant called Express. With this in place, we now need to initialize Express with the following. And finally, since Express will be acting as our web server, we need to specify a port for Express to listen on when it's ran. So now we'll be able to run our app by typing in node app.js into our terminal. And based off the port numbers that we specified within our listen function, we can now visit a URL in the browser that'll serve up the contents of our app. So if we visit localhost :3000 in the browser, you'll see that we're returned with the string cannot get /. Now this may make it seem like our app isn't actually running, but it's actually an indicator that it is. If I cancel out of Node within terminal and refresh the page, you'll see that the site is no longer being served up by Express. So let's run our app again and refresh the page to get back to where we were. Now what does this cannot get / mean? Well, Express is currently looking for the index of our site, which is typically represented by a /. And since we haven't specified what Express should do whenever someone visits our site's index, it's just spitting out an error correspondingly in regards to what's happening. So to specify what Express should do when someone visits our site's index, we're going to write the following code. app.get / function request res brackets close out. And what this is saying is, whenever our app receives a request at the root of our site, respond by running whatever code is within the following callback function. So in order to send content back to the browser whenever our site's index is visited, we need to make use of the res argument, which stands for response. Let's create a response by typing out res.end, and then whatever you want to put in the middle here. You can be YOLO, it can be, I don't know, anything you want. And if we refresh the page, you'll see that nothing has changed. And that's because we currently need to restart our Express server every time a change is made to app.js. Now obviously, this will get quite annoying really quickly. We don't want to have to constantly stop and restart our server whenever a change is made to one of our node files. But lucky for us, there's a solution to this provided by an npm package called Nodemon. And what Nodemon will do is, it'll basically check for all changes within your node files. And if a change is found, it'll automatically stop and restart your node server. So let's download Nodemon with the following command: npm install -g Nodemon. And once that's downloaded, you can go ahead and run the package by typing nodemon app.js into the terminal. And if we give it a second, you'll see that Nodemon is watching for changes within our app. And if we change something, Nodemon will take notice and restart our node server automatically for us. So let's add our res.end code back. Save the file, and if we check it out in the browser this time, now that we have our node server reset, our code is being recognized by Express and our text is being served up as we expected it to be. Alright, so we successfully installed Express and we set up some basic configuration, but it's currently only returning plain text within the browser, which, let's face it, is pretty useless at the moment. So what we're going to need to do next is configure Express to serve something you're probably more familiar with, an index.html file. So let's end this one here and learn how to serve up static files with Express in the next video. Later!